AITA for letting the police take my 13-year-old? I am 39F. I have a 13-year-old son who got into the wrong crowd at school. Trying to discipline and get him away from this crowd resulted in him rebelling, running away, stealing, disrespecting my rules and me, and the list goes on. Couple off days ago he and a friend decided to steal and his friend got caught. But son ran away. His friend gave him up and the police showed up at my house. My son was scared and begged me not to give him up. I let them in and told them where he was, and they spoke to him, and he out of fear tried to fight them. He was quickly overpowered. I was alarmed, but saw they weren't really hurting him. He keeps screaming for to help him and I didn't. They then arrested him and said they were taking him in, and he started crying. One cop stayed and said they will just take him into their station, but I can pick him up in about an hour when he calms down. Then they left. I picked him up when they rang me. He was very quiet, didn't speak to me, just went straight into his room. Hadn't spoken to me since. That night, I got a call from my ex-in-laws screaming at me for letting him go through all that, and that I've scarred him and that he's traumatized, and what kind of mother does that to their child? They've been constantly belittling me ever since and threatening to get custody of him, and now I'm starting to feel guilty. AITA? NTA. You made a tough decision, but I think it was the right one. He learned the hard way that there are consequences to those kinds of actions. In his eyes you may be the villain right now, but he should have learned something valuable. If you had stopped the cops from doing their job, this could have enabled and encouraged him to keep up with his behavior. Hopefully next time he'll think about the stuff he does and sees what kind of life he could lead if he continues down this path. Info. What help have these ex-in-laws offered you? It sounds like you are running out of options to keep this kid out of serious jail time and keep the kid alive. You didn't protect your child from the consequences, but you also didn't make the choices that brought you there. I'm sorry for both of you, and I'll bet you're not just feeling guilty but also distressed. And while people are going to recommend therapy, you can make a 13-year-old go for a tiny window here, but it's closing. And you can never make a person do the work. A scary thing happened to both of you, and the question is now what you both do with it and what you do together. Harsher discipline obviously won't do it, but reconnecting over what just happened might. Your son was given up by his friend. The cops knew exactly where he was. Even if you didn't allow them in, the cops would have been back. There is no running from this. The son has to face the consequences. Breaking the law should be scary. He needed to learn that there is consequences for his actions, and his father should step up and be a parent. However, I would make sure you get a lawyer, especially depending on the cost, and defend him that way. NTA. He needs to learn the consequences of his actions. You need to talk to him and explain why you did it, and find out if there is something more behind him acting out. Hopefully, since his friend gave him up so easily, he can get a better friend. He's lucky it wasn't worse and charged with a crime. It was probably pretty rough on you, and I'm sorry. Parents need to protect their children, but they also need to teach. In this instance, teaching was more important than coddling. NTA. There's no conflict here. He committed a crime. When the police showed up, he assaulted them. You never really had a say in whether or not they were taking him. Info needed. Did you make sure to check that the police had a warrant that named your son? If so, then they couldn't have forced their way in without your consent, and you could have some room to negotiate to come down to the station voluntarily. Did you ask them for a chance to talk him into surrendering? It would probably have been less traumatizing, and he would probably have a better chance at a lower sentence. Or perhaps to be able to transport him to the station yourself? He definitely brought this on himself. But there are steps that may have been available to reduce the risk and the trauma. Not the awe. Sit down with your son and have a chat. Apologize if you want. Explain that you have zero tolerance for criminal behavior and cannot do anything if the police decide to take him away, but will support him in any other way. Explain that you understand that he might have felt betrayed or neglected at the time, but there is nothing that you can do. Explain it is much better to let the process happen than intervene and risk making the situation worse and put yourself in bad situation for hiding a fugitive. It was better for it to happen at home than at somewhere public like school or starting a wild goose chase and delaying the inevitable and thus worsening. Something along the lines of it. Communicate. What would have the ex-in-laws do anyway if they were in your shoes? If they hid him, what then? Hide him forever? ANTA, but I had a cop hold his gun to my forehead when I was 13 for running away, so hope your cops aren't as crazy as the ones I've come across. Not offering a judgment, but just be aware that from your kid's point of view, he's going to see you as someone who's not going to help him when he's scared and confused. Get him some therapy quickly if you can and try to talk to him about why you thought him getting detained was best for him. NTA. Also info. Are you sure you even had a choice? Because when the police show up to arrest somebody, even a child, it's usually the old easy way or hard way, but you're coming with them sort of deal. From what I can see, you could have accompanied him, but that's about it, and still NTA on not doing that. https://www.wvtm13.com/article/22-year-old father killed in Alabama prison /45808613. This man was in jail for theft. Maybe this scares him straight. Maybe it doesn't. The criminal justice system is not interested in the well-being or rehabilitation of inmates and is notorious for letting them brutalize each other. NTA. Actions have consequences. And he got a good taste of that tonight. It was absolutely deserved. Be careful though that he is not planning to retaliate further. You should be monitoring every aspect of his behavior very closely for at least the next 3 months. NTA. The hell your ex wanted you to do? Lie to the cops? Jump in and wrestle them? Your boy messed up bad. I hope he gets scared out of that life. NTA. Your son should learn that there are consequences to his actions. But, more than likely, the relationship between you and your son only got more damaged from this. Your son was obviously very scared and you weren't there for him to calm him. Which is understandable because you were upset he broke the law. However, it would have been more convenient if you told him he had to go with the police because he broke the law, and you that weren't going to lie to the cops for him, but that you would be there for him throughout the whole process to calm him down. After you got back home, you could then tell him you do not tolerate this kind of behavior and you won't react as calmly and won't show up for him the next time it happens. Try to seek for counseling. I'd suggest you go to counseling first and apply cognitive techniques you learn there to your son before you introduce him to therapy as well. Right now, more than likely your son won't be willing to join you to therapy given his age and the relation between you two. Forcing him won't do any good. It's very important to stay calm and listen to how your son feels to find out what makes him display this kind of behavior. Make sure he feels heard and understood, but keep true to your rules and explain why they're there. Stand in your ground and draw your boundaries when he gets angry. But don't let your emotions get the best of you. You don't want to push your son further away. In Ta, unfortunately, when you steal and break the law, there are consequences. While I know it was hard to watch, maybe this is the reality check he needed to scare him into Behaving. It's better he learn a lesson at 13 than to be repeating the same mistakes over and over into adulthood. I would block the in-laws and tell them to bring on the custody battle. You didn't abuse your child, your son did something wrong and he had to be held accountable for it. Considering there's an ex involved here, I'm assuming your son experienced your divorce quite young. Those experiences count as adverse childhood events and can be deeply traumatic for children, even if it's obvious to the parents that they love their kid. The kids can develop internal narratives about themselves or their worthiness. The more trouble they get into, the more they see themselves as inherently bad or unworthy of love. They can often blame themselves for parents separating, or thinking they weren't enough to be worth staying together for, that a parent just didn't love them. I don't think you did anything wrong in this instance, but I think you should learn how to discuss emotions with your kid, and that starts with being emotionally open yourself, and inviting him to share in return. This means not telling him his beliefs about himself are wrong, his feelings aren't true or reasonable, or that there's no reason for him to feel that way about himself. You have to accept how he is feeling, and instead get curious about the why, and reaffirm how much you love him and are there to support him through these tumultuous times. Further restriction, punishment and an absence of connection will drive kids further towards crime and drugs and can damage relationships forever. Kids don't do these things in a vacuum, and it may be uncomfortable, but it's worth confronting how it happens. Good luck, X. NTA. You're a mom who was faced with a difficult situation. Hopefully this will be a wake-up call for your son and he'll choose a better path. Shame on your in-laws for being so ugly about it. Wishing you peace. You need to be careful. He will probably now resent you for the rest of his life and never trust you. I understand what you are doing, but if he just falls further, your life might be in danger in the future. What did you say to your son? Did you try talking at all? Just because you don't hear of cops killing somebody in your area doesn't mean it doesn't happen. YTA. Ever heard of the program, Scared Straight? It was designed for kids who fell in with the wrong crowd, and instead of scaring kids into behaving, it had the opposite effect and actually increased delinquency among some of the kids. Kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. Traumatizing someone is never the answer to bad behavior. Editing to say I work in program evaluation for the DOJ and hold my graduate degree plus a decade of experience in criminal justice research.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.